Good morning. Hesperus is Phosphorus. 1. A kind of palindrome. Hesperus is Phosphorus, and the morning star is the evening star, and Lucifer the light-bringer is a kind of match, is the very devil, a dull romantic rebel, is Abendstern, is Morgenstern, is the planet Venus, second from the sun, named for a goddess of love, is her own palindrome, is the evening star, is the morning star, is my silver planet, both of eve and morn, is Hesperus, is Phosphorus. 2. Carnal knowledge of time. In a way, the now, the material present, that which is immediate. In a way, the present, the time that seems at first blush of sunrise like it might be the most radically available form of experience, inalienable, is also the most fragile, the least obedient to possession. A few truisms. Something of the past can be grasped in theory. The present converts to the past with perfect economy. Something of the future, too, can be seized in theory, if only the parsimonious claim that it will be built out of the materials that have accreted in the now. The sedimentation of the past in the present, of which we can only ever be imperfectly aware. Nothing of the present can be possessed in theory, or not at least in the kind of theory that is interested in possessing things. For in the now, and now, the present moment, lacking duration, or does it, can only be inhabited, experienced, intermittently refused. In other words, the instant of the present is possible only in practice. It is not the present you possess, the present possesses you. Perhaps, very occasionally, it is given to you to know it. How things, you too are involved in things, are always becoming historical. A glimpse of the planet Venus in the glow of morning or evening, easily confused. A glimpse of the planet Venus might be just this kind of provocation. Donna Stonecipher, poet, and his heart had turned into an antique, for now it had carnal knowledge of time. What does it mean to stay loyal to the present, which is ineluctably of what philosophy calls the given world? To keep faith with the world as it is, rather than the world as it was, or might be, or will be? What reason is there to enmesh ourselves more deeply in the present of the world, especially at those times when the right now can only be experienced as damaged or damaging, a chaos of ambivalence without end? Is looking through or away or beyond or up at the silver planet that haunts the dawn or the dusk just visible now? As I say this, through 10,000 pollutions of light, is looking through or away or beyond or up a betrayal of the given or a way of running after it with the seed of a promise on your tongue? Evening or morning, what bright thing is trembling there in the sky? Will you tell me if you know? When are we? I mean, what time is it? 3. The paradise position, or our silver planet. In an odd narrative poem from 1819 called Lamia, John Keats writes of a woman, a nymph called Lamia, who was once a snake, and her lover, a rather dim youth called Lycius. The poem understands Lamia as inescapably, hideously monstrous. The pair have secreted themselves in a house in Corinth with the noisy world of a hostile city pressing in at the windows of their retreat, that purple-lined palace of sweet sin. When Lamia fears her lover longs too powerfully for the world outside the enchanted one they have made together, Lycius responds like this, bending to her open eyes, where he was mirrored small in paradise. My silver planet, both of eve and morn, why will you plead yourself so sad, forlorn, while I am striving how to fill my heart with deeper crimson and a double smart? How to entangle, trammel up and snare your soul in mine, and labyrinth you there, like the hid scent in an unbudded rose. My silver planet, both of eve and morn, Lycius calls Lamia, sensing despite himself her doubleness, the garden in the serpent and the serpent in the garden. Lamia, formerly a snake, arguably worries less about keeping her lover for his own sake than for the sake of the existence that is possible in and through him, its particular forms and textures and colors, the sensuous pleasures available to her through her own human beauty and his love of it. Not Lysias alone she wants, but the world that emanates, whether Keats knew it or not, from the intricate play of their intimacy. Lysias knows nothing of Lamia's Ophidian secret, and he has been thinking not of leaving her, but of trumpeting to the world the honeyed vanity of his accomplished desire, in order to weave even more tightly the mazy tapestry of their attachment. The ensnared, unwitting, plots unnecessarily to hold the ensnarer to the form of his own captivity. The choreography of this scene of reaffirmation in Lamia is an odd mise en abîme. Different possibilities of containment are nested within one another like Russian dolls, or the feeling of being poised between two mirrors that display your image in infinite regress. Lysias looks into Lamia's eyes to find there his own reflection, mirrored small in paradise. He sees his own image held in the bounds of those eyes, and understands himself not as a prisoner of love, but as one in paradise, a verb that means to place in paradise, to bring into a state of rapture or supreme happiness, to transport, ravish, and also to make a paradise of a place or state. Lysias is held in Lamia's thrall as he is held in her eyes, as they are held in the seclusion of their hideaway. The word paradise traces to an old Avestan term meaning a walled place, and often a garden. Etymologically speaking, the difference between a paradise and a prison is entirely a matter of the context of enclosure. In the narcissism of romantic projection, Lysias experiences the boundedness of his reflection in the mysterious barricades of Lamia's eyes as the rapture of the imparadised, a microcosm of the entranced layers of confinement that will so soon come a ruin when Lysias and Lamia are thrust out of the walled plot of their mutual solitude and back into the world. On every level, save that of the conscious surface, Lysias's rhetoric suggests that he knows something, but refuses to eat from his tree of knowledge. He knows that his paradise of isolation might easily be experienced as a prison, that the state of the imparadised is as mobile and fragile as the quick movement that might take you from looking at your small self, reproduced in the eyes of the beloved, to gazing out the window at the world that still goes on without you. The incentive for Lysias's repudiation of his own knowledge, which the language of the poem knows for him but does not spare him, is strong. To prolong his sojourn in an earthly paradise that was never built for eternal residence, but exists rather in a stealthy confidence with the clamor of the given world, a paradise whose fleeting vernal sweetness, so long as it is, at the least, theoretically achievable out of the splintered wood of our wandering, makes it possible to inhabit the sour wrinkles of the world we know. Unlike Milton's Adam and Eve in their unfallen innocence, Lysias reveals in every sign and syllable a terrible wisdom about the temporality of paradise, that it was always a garden grown on borrowed time. This is what you might call the paradise position, the understanding that paradise, not perfection, but paradise can be inhabited here, now, over and over, though perhaps not easily. Paradise can be had, but it cannot be held. It will not hold you. When you occupy the paradise position, the real temptation, the real serpent in the garden, is to push away with both hands the knowledge that the best and only trace of paradise that might remain with you is the faculty for sustaining a relationship to this world in all its cruelty and bliss. Why is this unbearable then? Unbearable in pain or in pleasure, since it makes life possible. Why unbearable, since the paradise position is, to borrow a word now obsolete, zoetic, tending towards life? Because when you occupy this orientation to the world, you know now that the silver others of this planet are imaginable and possible. Because you know, too, that through these silver planets, the substance of the damaged actual may be, for the first time, truly visible as what it is, the arrangement not of immutable design, but of history, chance, and volition. Because paradise remembers your name, even when you have forgotten the name of paradise. Because paradise remembers the taste of you, because you are fresh on its tongue as the first forbidden fruit. 4. Hesper and Phosphor. Sub Rosa, the philosopher Gottlob Frege was politically noxious. A notebook from 1924 is particularly revealing. So let's make mischief, set Frege against Frege. In a paper from 1892 called Sense and Reference, the philosopher proposed a logic puzzle that came to have two names, a signal irony given the nature of the problem. You could call the quandary Frege's puzzle, or you could call it Hesperus is Phosphorus. At heart, this puzzle is a puzzle of proper names. I'll try and explain that. Ancient Greek astronomy had two names for the celestial object we now know, bright burning as the planet Venus. Hesperus, or star of evening, when observed in the westering of the sun, and Phosphorus, or light bringer, when visible in the east of rosy aurora, daybreak. What does it mean for our theories of logic and language, wondered Frege so many centuries later, that different labels can index the same object? What does it mean that the same thing can go by any number of diverse titles depending on the context of encounter? In order to solve this problem of co-referring nouns, Frege posits that proper names have two aspects: reference, which means the ability of the name to point to, and sense, which compasses the socially held significance of the object, its contexts of interpretation. So reference, the name's capacity to correspond to the object, and sense, the net of socially reverberant meanings that the name sets in play, as one vigorous jerk at the rope of a carillon might ring many bells at once. What matters now is not whether Frege was right about the proper name in the domains of language and logic. There are good arguments, in fact, against his sense-reference distinction. What matters is how this set of terms helps us frame a problem of relation to the given world, the now, the present moment. So, Hesperus is Phosphorus. What does it mean that a single object, the planet Venus, can be referred to as Hesperus at twilight and Phosphorus at dawn? Two names, multiple senses, a single referent. And what does it mean when we encounter that strange thing, a name that has a sense, that means something to us, a sense but no referent? This uncanny experience is actually common as air. In imaginative literature, in poetry, in fiction, we meet people we can never meet, places we can never go, thoughts we have never thought for ourselves, feelings we have never felt firsthand. In literature, in the sphere of imagination, sense without reference is a form of oxygen. By this logic, in order to breathe the sense of art, we have to sacrifice our concern with its bare truth value, its secure correspondence to reference in the given world. I can say, Odysseus was set ashore at Ithaca while sound asleep, and you can reply, Odysseus, the sailor, man of sorrows, yes. I knew him, darling, once. Even fast asleep on an island's shore, you couldn't trust him. You can say this to me, and I'll understand what you mean, and we can wonder who set the sailor ashore and why. And even though you have lied to me, because there is no Odysseus and there is no shore, and even in dreams I doubt you've met him, even though you have lied to me, you have spoken true, and for once in our lives, I believe you. A relation of lopsided attachment is nearly always credible. W.H. Auden, poet. How should we like it were stars to burn with a passion for us we could not return? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. You do not, in fact, need a rendezvous with the aesthetic to fetch up against a sense without a reference. When we speak of those who are absent, when we speak of the dead, when we speak of the future, when we speak of all that could be but isn't yet, when we speak in the conditional or the counterfactual, in any of what the grammarians call the irrealis moods, when we speak sense without reference, we inhabit potentially the paradise position, the unsteady, unevenly accessible window where forms of life different from and better than ours look possible, even if not fully or perpetually habitable, where we can talk ourselves into them, where we are involved, deeply involved, in a strange grammar of cathexis that charges with all gradations of sorrow and pleasure those things which are not, which are absent, which are imaginary, which are distant and indifferent as a star, and so provide the pattern for a cathexis to all those things immediate counter, strange, estranged. The paradise position is, too, a mode for registering the loss of what has been most real to us, and perhaps the most confounding effect of loss, that what is lost to us, much like what was never ours to lose in the first place, still signifies, even in absence. Oh, for the touch of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still. The marvel is not that we are capable of maintaining constancy to ceaselessly vanishing objects, the traveling beloved, the wandering planet, the evanescing touch, the dead. The marvel is rather that we are so often flummoxed by the action of our own fidelity. 5. Thou art the same. Alfred Lord Tennyson's In Memoriam AHH is a lushly homoerotic elegy written after the sudden, devastating death of a friend of his university days. In one section of this lengthy poem, Tennyson imagines the first glimmer of Hesperus scored to the sounds of the end of a laboring day in the rapidly industrializing landscape of Victorian England, and the first rise of Phosphorus as the same routines of work begin the next morning. Something like the psychoanalyst Melanie Klein's concept of splitting seems to be operant here. In object relations theory, splitting entails the division of some object into irreconcilable parts, as when the infant perceives the mother as either entirely good or entirely bad, cannot comprehend that the person who sustains life is the same one who might leave you lonely, vulnerable to hurt and potentially to death itself. In splitting, the world is fragmented without hope of reparation. The morning of Tennyson's poem seems at first to follow this pattern. It separates the planet Venus into its evening and morning avatars, sad Hesper o'er the buried sun, and bright Phosphor fresher for the night. Hesper, who watches over buried light, and Phosphor the beginner, who calls the birds to waking, seem to exist in perfect contradiction. They do not believe in each other, even as the sorrowing evening self sometimes finds it hard to believe that tomorrow might be different from today. And yet, ultimately, the morning poem cannot deny the self-similarity between Hesper and Phosphor, who burn, however distantly, over the self-same world, who are not distinct but identical, even if their sense of their identity, because we cannot be in all times and all places at once, is unavailable to the subject bound in history. The poem works its way to the uneasy resolution, the uneasy repair of the hyphen. Sweet Hesper, Phosphor, double name, for what is one, the first, the last. Thou, like my present and my past, thy place is changed, thou art the same. A double name for what is one. The sweetness of the composite Hesper-Phosphor lies in a conditional synthesis of the object, possible only in the hinges of day. Both Hesper and Phosphor refer to the planet Venus, but because the mourner changes place with respect to Hesper-Phosphor, with respect to the lost object, because present streams seamlessly into past, it is possible at star rise and star set to register the right now of time and grief as continuity, repetition, recapitulation, symmetry born of the great asymmetry of a life lost, an integration whose accomplishment is imaginable, if not quite achievable. The same world that is unquestionably, materially too much with us is the self-same matter that can give rise to conditions of life now present to us only in possibility. Abendstern of twilight writes to Morgenstern at dawn. Morgenstern at dawn to Abendstern at twilight. The second self calls out to its likeness in the future or the past, changed and still the same. Hesper-Phosphor, bittersweet. 6. Morgenstern to Abendstern. Dear Morgenstern, dear second self, I cannot live with you. We cannot live with one another. That would be another life. Nonetheless, I am happy always when I find a letter from you in the mailbox, and I think you don't mind it so much, hearing from me. All morning, my own morning, our morning, though never yours, I have been reading of the transit of Venus. You'll know all about it by the time you receive this, of course, but let me be for the moment the silver wait a while that belongs to the golden nothing, that belongs to you, who are my future, you who live in the present where all that is solid still melts into air. Does it frighten you? Don't, my dear, don't be frightened. A transit of Venus is an astronomical event that occurs when Venus travels right between the sun and a planet with a larger orbit. From Earth, this occurrence is visible as Venus, a little black smudge like a velvet patch, sails across the face of the sun over a matter of hours, an occlusion reminiscent of certain minor eclipses. Transits of Venus are reliable. You can expect them about every 243 years. Oh, and they occur in pairs, the first transit, and then after a period of 8 years, its companion arc. There is a half-charming tragicomedy of missed connections concerning the pair of transits in 1761 and 1769. Stories of white Europeans of the 18th century are debarred by fiat from the full complement of charm. The French astronomer Guillaume le Gentil set off on a perilous journey to observe the transit of 1761. The storms of war and weather foiled him. For fear of missing the next transit of 1769, he decided to remain near the Coromandel coast to catch the shadow of Venus in its flight. Alas, on the evening of the second transit, clouds covered the sky like a cunning painted screen. He saw nothing. When he returned to France after 11 years of absence, he learned that his wife had married again and his properties had disowned him. For several years before his disappointed resurrection, all love and all law had considered him quite dead. In a poem called Phosphorus reading by his own light, don't dissemble, Morgenstern, you remember it for both of us. In Phosphorus reading by his own light, Wallace Stevens writes that it is difficult to read. The page is dark, yet he knows what it is that he expects. The page is blank, or a frame without a glass, or a glass that is empty when he looks. The greenness of night lies on the page and goes down deeply in the empty glass. Look, realist, not knowing what you expect. The green falls on you as you look. It is difficult to read. Distant phosphor, Abendstern, future indicative. You're the only one who could manage it, I think, because you know what to expect. Because for you, all expectation is autopoetic in the present tense, your version of a sunrise. Somehow, I don't think you're bored by that, though I might be, not half so good as you. On me, the green falls, and if the glass is dry, there is something in that hyaline clarity, something in how it takes the gleam of verdant evening and refracts it into rainbow, 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 the prism of our similitude, willy-nilly, where I end and you begin in my ending. Right made some time is all I ask, from beyond the day, from the other side of the stars, because despite myself, I want to know. I want to know how it finishes for me, and even more than this, I want to know how you come to be invented, how you learn what to do, what you have always done. Go on without me. Yours, or else some synonym for love. SVV. Abendstern. 7. A palindrome of a kind. So, Hesperus is Phosphorus, and the morning star is the evening star, and Lucifer, the light bringer, is a kind of match, is the very devil, a dull romantic rebel, is Abendstern, is Morgenstern, is the planet Venus, second from the sun, named for a goddess of love, is her own palindrome, is the evening star, is the morning star, is my silver planet, both of eve and morn, is Hesperus, is Phosphorus.